of the second week of September, 1862, only 40 miles northwest of Washington. Here Lee faced an unexpected problem not from the Union capital, but to his rear where 14,000 Union soldiers at Harper's Ferry and Martinsburg threatened his avenue of supply and communication back into Virginia. "I have no doubt they will leave that section," Lee confidently informed President Jefferson Davis on September 5. 4 days later, however, not one bluecoat had departed from the Shenandoah Valley. Nor would they. General-in-Chief Henry W. Halleck determined to maintain a strong Federal presence in the Northern Valley. "Our army is in motion," Halleck wired the Harper's Ferry commander on September 7. "It is important that Harper's Ferry be held to the latest moment." Frustrated by the Union Army's failure to cooperate, Lee turned his full attention toward Harper's Ferry. Further delay in opening his supply route was intolerable. The Federals holding the valley must be moved or eradicated. Harper's Ferry, never intended as a target in Lee's first invasion of the North, suddenly became the target. To eliminate the Harper's Ferry problem, Lee developed a plan. He would divide the army into 4 columns. 3 would converge upon Harper's Ferry, seizing the 3 mountains surrounding the town. The 4th column would move to Boonesboro, 15 miles north of Harper's Ferry, where it would await the return of the Harper's Ferry expedition. Lee labeled his divide and conquer plan as Special Orders 191. Although splitting and scattering his army, the Confederate commander anticipated minimal danger from the enemy. The Federal Army had been acting defensively since the invasion of Maryland, spreading like an amoeba to cover all approaches to Washington and Baltimore. Lee expected his foe to remain cautious and non-aggressive, permitting ample time for his army to complete the Harper's Ferry operation and to reunite. To execute the Harper's Ferry investment, Lee selected Stonewall Jackson. No other officer in the Confederate Army could surpass Jackson's knowledge of Harper's Ferry. In the spring of 1861, with the war in Virginia less than 2 weeks old, Jackson's first field assignment was commander of the post at Harper's Ferry. Applying the studious and methodical approach he had developed as a West Point student and later practiced as a professor at VMI, Jackson analyzed and memorized the Harper's Ferry terrain, and theorized about attack and defense. In fact, Old Jack had tested his theories while directing a sortie against Harper's Ferry during his famous Valley Campaign in late May, 1862. To accomplish his mission eradicate the Union presence in the rear of the Confederate Army, Lee assigned 6 of his 9 divisions to the Harper's Ferry operation. 2/3 of the rebel army, or approximately 26,000 men, began tramping toward Harper's Ferry on September 10. For General Lee, Harper's Ferry was not a sideshow, but the show. Stonewall Jackson faced a complex challenge. He commanded 3 diverging columns, approaching Harper's Ferry from 3 different directions, with 3 separate targets, mountains, as his objectives. Further complicating the plan was geography. 2 of the columns had to recross the Potomac River, without bridges or pontoons. In addition, Jackson's wing had to scale 2 mountains, Catoctin and South Mountain, en route to the river. Even upon reaching Harper's Ferry, the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers truncated the Confederates. Special Orders 191 required an extraordinary level of coordination, communication, and convergence. Would it work? Lee required Jackson to make it work. The future of the invasion depended upon success at Harper's Ferry. Failure was not an option. Jackson exuded confidence. At 5 a.m. on September 10, his column of 14,000 men began marching west out of Frederick on the National Road. 3 days later, after a circuitous trek of 57 miles over 2 mountains and the Potomac, via Boonesboro, Williamsport, and Martinsburg, the head of Jackson's wing approached Harper's Ferry from the west, debouching on Schoolhouse Ridge. Meanwhile, John G. Walker's division had secured Loudoun Heights from the south, and by late afternoon on the 13th, Lafayette McLaws had gained control of Maryland Heights to the north. The Federals were trapped. Indeed, 14,000 Union soldiers were surrounded, but not surrendered. Colonel Dixon Stansbury Miles, the Harper's Ferry commander, had specific orders: be energetic and active, and defend all places to the last extremity, demanded a September 5 dictate from Miles's superior, Major General John G. Wool. There must be no abandoning of post, and shoot the first man that thinks of it. Although surrounded by Jackson's men on September 13, Miles refused to wave the white flag. Confederate infantry had seized the crests of Maryland and Loudoun Heights, but Miles persevered. The high ground was lost, but the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers separated his command from the mountain tops, making it improbable that enemy infantry would attack him, and nearly impossible for rebel small arms fire to reach him. "The position before me is a strong one," Jackson admitted in a message to McLaws and Walker. In fact, Jackson never faced a stronger natural bulwark held by the enemy. Yet Jackson could not despair. He must eliminate the Federal thorn. He must bring Lee victory. "So soon as you get your batteries all planted, let me know, as I desire to send in a flag of truce, for the purpose of getting out the non-combatants, should the commanding officer refuse to surrender." But Cromwell retired compassion in an instant. "Should we have to attack," Jackson declared, "let the work be done thoroughly, fire on the houses when necessary. The citizens can keep out of harm's way from your artillery. Demolish the place if it is occupied by the enemy, and does not surrender." Then came word of trouble. Walker learned, in a signal message from McLaws, that the Union Army was threatening McLaws's rear. Walker relayed the concern to Jackson. Now aware of the unexpected Union thrust and likely baffled by it, Jackson stubbornly clung to his coordinated ring of fire. "Do not open until General McLaws notifies me what he can probably effect," he cautioned Walker. Old Jack, the former instructor of artillery at VMI, desired a textbook operation. But Walker grew impatient. Concerned about his own division's vulnerability, Walker ordered his 5 cannon to commence firing shortly after 1 p.m. Within minutes, Jackson's batteries on Schoolhouse Ridge were yanking lanyards, and by 2 p.m., 4 rifled pieces atop Maryland Heights were hurling shells from the north. "The cannonade is now terrific," wrote Lieutenant Henry Binney, Miles's aide-de-camp. "The enemy's shell and shot fall in every direction, houses are demolished and detonation among the hills terrible." For more than 5 hours, over 50 Confederate cannon launched missiles at the hapless Harper's Ferry Yankees. The 8-gun Federal battery nearest Loudoun Heights was silenced, and thousands of bluecoats hunkered in narrow ravines to escape the rain of iron. Yet at dusk, the stars and stripes continued to fly, frustrating Jackson further. Stonewall gripped reality. Artillery alone would not reduce the enemy. He must attack. Thence Jackson displayed his tactical brilliance, perhaps his best tactical plan of the war. His plan called for 3 maneuvers: first, a flanking march and attack against the enemy's left on Bolivar Heights; second, a feigned assault against the Union right center on Bolivar Heights as a diversion; and third, a flanking march and redeployment of 10 cannon to the base of Loudoun Heights. The rugged mountainous terrain of Harper's Ferry made each of these maneuvers difficult, perhaps even impossible. The black night of September 14-15 further complicated Jackson's plans. But part of Jackson's genius was the improbable midnight marching to places where neither soldier nor cannon dare go. Stonewall's remarkable tactics dramatically changed the situation for Dixon Miles. During 11 hours of darkness, Jackson had decoyed his enemy, deployed 5,000 infantrymen and 20 cannon on his left flank, and positioned artillery at point-blank range to fire into the ravines. Jackson had outgeneraled his opponent. Shortly after dawn on the 15th, the Confederates opened a blistering barrage from their new positions. The infernal screech owls came hissing and singing, then bursting, recalled a New York soldier, plowing great holes in the earth, filling our eyes with dust, and tearing many giant trees to atoms. By 8 a.m., Miles had had enough. Outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outnumbered, Miles and a Federal Council of War unanimously decided upon surrender. Through God's blessing, Jackson scribbled in a note to General Lee, Harper's Ferry and its garrison are to be surrendered. When the commanding general received the message about noon on the 15th near the Antietam Creek, he made his decision to stand in Maryland and to reunite the army near Sharpsburg. Jackson's dramatic victory at Harper's Ferry reaped 73 captured cannon, 200 wagons, about 13,000 small arms, and nearly 12,700 Union prisoners. And what price did Jackson pay? 289 casualties. No Confederate general and no Confederate victory anywhere matched these results. The largest surrender of United States forces during the Civil War occurred at Harper's Ferry. The biggest engagement of the Civil War in present-day West Virginia happened at Harper's Ferry. The Battle of Antietam never would have transpired without the preceding Confederate victory at Harper's Ferry.